The satin folds of my wedding dress puddled around me like a sea of ivory, heavy and suffocating. My phone screen glowed in my trembling hand, its light spilling across the dim bridal suite. The words on it sliced through me sharper than any blade. I can't walk you down the aisle. Elena's event is too important to miss. I'll try for the reception. My father's message blurred as tears surged, hot and relentless. I gasped for air, but the room spun. Bouquets toppled, champagne glasses clinked. The air itself seemed to tighten around me. A whisper escaped my lips, brittle and breaking. No, 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 no. The phone slipped from my fingers and shattered against the wall. The bridesmaids froze. Lila's mascara wand hovered midair. Camille's mouth hung open. Maya? What happened? I couldn't answer. The diamond on my hand mocked me, a promise about to be fulfilled while another lay in ruins. The door burst open and Simone, the wedding planner, strode in with her clipboard, her voice brisk and cheerful until she saw the wreckage in my face. My father, I croaked, every syllable slicing my throat raw. He's not coming. The air cracked with disbelief. My father, who had sworn after my mother's death that he would never abandon me. My father, who had once held my 13-year-old hand at her funeral and whispered, "We're a team now, always." How quickly words curdle into lies. And yet 9 months ago when Liam and I set the date, he'd been overjoyed. At his kitchen table his hand had covered mine. Nothing would make me prouder than walking you down the aisle. I believed him then. I almost feel foolish now. The first warning sign appeared 3 months ago when Elena, my sister, announced her glittering career gala on the same day. It's bad timing, my father said at Sunday dinner, his fork dragging lazy circles through his peas. But I'm sure we can make it work. The ceremony is at 4, I had reminded him. Her party starts at 7. You can do both. He'd shifted in his chair, muttering about traffic, about timing, about how much Elena needed him. The excuses began small, a pebble dislodged at the top of a mountain. But week after week they gathered speed, rolling into something unstoppable. And now, 3 hours before I was to marry the man I loved, he had chosen his favorite child again. Through a text. Simone crouched in front of me, her eyes softer now. Is there anyone else? An uncle maybe? Or would you prefer to walk alone? Alone. The word rang in my ears like a death knell. Just then my discarded phone lit up again. The name on the screen made my breath hitch. Uncle Henry. My father's brother. The one who never missed a recital, a graduation, a birthday. The one who had shown up always. I answered with shaking hands. Maya. His voice carried warmth, concern, fury carefully contained. Your father just called me. I don't know what to say. He's not coming, I sobbed. I know. And I am so sorry. His voice thickened. Then after a pause, would you let me walk you down the aisle? The tears burned hotter, but this time not from despair. Something fragile but real shifted inside me. You'd do that. In a heartbeat, he said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I ended the call, my bridesmaids leaned in, their faces etched with concern. Uncle Henry is coming, I whispered, the words steadying me as they left my lips. He'll walk me down the aisle. Relief washed over the room, exhaled like a collective prayer. But before hope could settle, Lila stepped forward, clutching her phone. Maya, there's something I need to show you. On her screen glowed messages between her and Elena, dated weeks ago. Dad's still wavering about the wedding. Don't worry, Elena had replied. I'll keep him busy. You won't make it to both. Already working on it. I collapsed onto the vanity stool, bile rising in my throat. Sabotage. My sister had orchestrated this. She had stolen my father from me again, just as she had when I received the National Science Award years ago, when she had whispered lies to him so he stayed away. The truth pressed down heavy. This wasn't new. Elena had been weaving her strings for years, pulling him to her side, casting me into the shadows. After Mom's death, she claimed the role of woman of the house, and with it my father's loyalty. She's been doing this my whole life, I murmured, more to myself than anyone else. Camille's arm wrapped around me, grounding me. Then let today be the day you stop letting her win. A knock at the door startled us. Simone peeked in. Mrs. Lawson is here, Liam's mother. She wants to see you. I nodded. Moments later, Eleanor Lawson entered, her pale blue dress shimmering softly. Her eyes widened at my tear-streaked face. She took my hands gently. Oh, Maya. Her kindness almost broke me again. Eleanor sat beside me, her presence calm, her grip steady. Henry called me, she said softly. I am so sorry. I shook my head, unable to keep the anguish from spilling. I don't understand why he does this. Why my father chooses her every time. Her gaze deepened, threaded with memory. When I was your age, my father refused to come to my wedding. He didn't approve of my husband. I kept waiting until the last moment, hoping he'd change his mind. He never did. Her voice wavered but didn't break. 4 years afterward, I bent my life trying to earn his approval. Birthdays, holidays, milestones, always hoping. And each time, disappointment. It took me decades to learn. The pain doesn't stop until you stop handing them the power to cause it. Her words cut deep because they were my truth too. How many times had I rearranged my life for my father's convenience? How many nights had I swallowed tears when he didn't show? But then I remembered Liam's family dinners. His father pulling out my chair, Eleanor remembering my favorite dessert from months before. They had shown me what real family looked like. Eleanor brushed my cheek with a mother's tenderness I hadn't felt since losing my own. This day is yours. Don't let their absence define it. Let love define it. A text buzzed on my phone. It was from Liam. Whatever you need, I'm here. Even if that means waiting. I love you. Tears welled again, but these tasted of gratitude. I don't want to wait, I whispered. This isn't about who isn't here. It's about Liam. About me. About the people who chose to come. 10 minutes later, Uncle Henry arrived, tuxedo slightly wrinkled from rushing, but his eyes alight with devotion. When he saw me, he stopped, his chest rising with emotion. Look at you, he breathed. Absolutely radiant. He pulled me into a hug so tight it mended something broken inside. Then he pressed a velvet box into my hands. These were my mother's, he said, opening it to reveal a strand of pearls. She wore them on her wedding day. I've been saving them for the right moment. My hands trembled as I touched them. I can't accept. You can, he interrupted gently, fastening them around my neck. As your family. Real family. The weight of the pearls settled against my collarbone like a blessing. Soon, Simone ushered us to the chapel for a practice walk. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass, scattering colors across the aisle. With Henry's arm steady beneath my hand, I practiced each step. The photographer clicked away, documenting what felt like a new story unfolding. Not abandonment, but resilience. Halfway down, I faltered, tears blurring my vision. I'm afraid, I whispered, that when I look back, all I'll remember is who wasn't here. Henry stopped, turned to face me, and pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, initials stitched delicately in the corner. Your mother gave me this before she died, he said. She told me you might need it someday. I pressed it to my cheek, breathing in the faint lavender scent still clinging to it. My knees buckled, but his grip steadied me. You don't need to thank me, Maya, he murmured, voice thick with emotion. This is what family does. They show up. And for the first time that day I believed it. The suite emptied until only the echo of my breathing remained. I sat before the vanity as the makeup artist dabbed carefully beneath my eyes, trying to coax order from the chaos the morning had unleashed. The pearls lay cool at my collarbone, their weight both anchor and invitation. Stay present, choose love. My phone buzzed again. The name on the screen made the air thin. I stared at it long enough for the vibration to stop, then start again, persevering like a knock at a locked door. I answered before I could talk myself out of it. Hiya, he said, already exasperated, as if we were mid-argument and I'd made his point difficult on purpose. You're refusing to reschedule an Elena's celebration. She needs me. This is complicated. The brush paused near my cheek. Complicated. As if love were a calendar he couldn't reconcile. We set this date 9 months ago, I whispered, my mouth dry. We asked nothing of you but to keep a promise. He hesitated, the silence heavy with 100 past excuses. Why must you make me choose? A quiet, stunned laugh broke from me. The kind that isn't humor at all, just the sound grief makes when it's finished crying. I didn't make you choose, I said, steady now. You already did. I ended the call before his reply could reach me and unravel the thread of resolve I'd tied around my ribs. The makeup artist pressed a tissue into my palm. We said nothing. Sometimes the most compassionate thing in a room full of words is silence. Another knock. Uncle Henry slipped in, tuxedo fixed, boutonniere pinned. His presence calmed the air. Even the lilies seemed to stand straighter. "Walk with me," he said, offering his arm like a bridge. The corridor to the chapel was hushed, the carpet swallowing our footfalls. My body felt like a bell someone had just struck, trembling with a ringing only I could hear. At the chapel doors, Henry paused and turned, eyes bright but clear. "Whatever happens on the other side," he said, "we will meet it together." I nodded, breath returning to me in pieces. Through the seam of the doors I could hear the string quartet swell, tuning the moment until it felt like it might burst. We practiced once more beneath the stained glass, sunlight breaking into colors across the aisle like someone had scattered confetti made of sky. Simone charted our pace with a conductor's precision. "Shoulders back, chin soft, steps to the measure," she murmured. On the third pass I faltered again, this time not from sadness but from the immensity of it all. I imagined my mother's hands fastening a veil I no longer wore, imagined old family stories shifting to make room for new truths. Henry noticed before I tipped. He produced a square of white cotton embroidered LM in tiny blue thread. "Your mother's," he said. "She gave it to me once and made me promise to keep it safe. I think she meant for you." The cloth was simple. The meaning was not. I pressed it against the corner of my eye, and for a breath I could almost smell lavender and warm laundry and the assurance that love is not undone by absence. Soon guests began to arrive. Murmurs bloomed like low tide, rising and receding as people found their seats. Somewhere outside a child laughed and then tried not to. The quartet pivoted to the first processional. My bridesmaids gathered, Lila squeezing my hand, Camille pressing gloss into my palm like talisman and touch-up in one. "We're with you," they said without saying it, aligning themselves in practiced order, bouquets trembling with a breeze sneaking beneath the doors. Simone lifted her headset. "Positions." The doors opened for the first bridesmaid. The sudden flood of light felt holy. Lila stepped forward, then Camille, then the line thinned until it was only me and Henry, two figures poised at the threshold of a story we were rewriting in real time. "You ready?" he asked. "I'm terrified," I said honestly, then surprised myself by smiling. And yes. The music shifted. The doors opened for us. We moved. Each step was a choice, toward a future not defined by who didn't show up but by who did. Halfway down I found Liam. He was already crying and the sight of his tears undid the knot behind my ribs. Not pity. Reverence. Gratitude. He stood a little taller when he saw me. At the front, Henry turned to me and placed my hand in Liam's. "With all I have and all I know," he said softly, "I entrust her to Joy." The quartet held a suspended note I felt in my bones, and then the officiant smiled like someone who had just watched a door unlock. "Welcome," she said, voice carrying easily. "Today we witness two people choosing each other, and we honor those who chose to stand with them." I felt the room shift, a shared exhale, as if everyone recognized that simple sentence as an altar of its own. The ceremony unfolded like the first page of a book I'd always wanted to read. We spoke vows we'd written in the language of ordinary miracles. Coffee poured before alarms, the square of light that finds the kitchen table at 4 p.m., the promise to find each other again after every hard day. When Liam slid the ring onto my finger, his hands trembled so much that we laughed with our tears, and the laughter untangled something that had been tight in me for years. When the officiant pronounced us married, the cheers rose quick and bright, petals lifted from the ground as if the air itself had decided to celebrate. We kissed with the softness of a beginning and the fierceness of a rescue. Above the canopy of leaves, a cloud shifted, and sunlight warmed the top of my veil until it felt like a blessing laid by someone I could not see but believed was there. At the reception, the ballroom shimmered, twinkle lights strung like constellations, tables glossed with glass and candlelight. There is a particular hush to happiness when it becomes communal. You can hear the clink of forks and the small surprise of someone tasting something delicious for the first time. We entered to a roar, announced by the DJ as if we were returning from a voyage. The moment for the father-daughter dance arrived like a bruise you forget about until you bump it. My breath hitched and then Henry stepped forward, eyes gentle and sure. "Just for the first verse," he said, offering his hand. We swayed to an old song that had scored 100 childhood afternoons. His posture was formal at first, then softened into the comfortable rhythm of two people who have learned each other's steps in crisis and in calm. "Thank you," I murmured, and he shook his head. "There's no debt in love, kiddo." When Liam cut in, he spun me once, twice, the world blurring into circles of light. Over his shoulder, the ballroom doors opened. A figure paused at the threshold, tie crooked, hair windblown, apology already rehearsed on his face. "My father." Liam followed my gaze, tightened his hand at my back. "He's here," he whispered. "Too late," I whispered back, astonished to discover the words weren't vengeful. They were simply true. He hovered at the edge of the celebration like someone peering through glass at a life they'd chosen not to enter. People noticed because absence draws attention even when it returns as presence. Henry greeted him first, a quiet exchange near the bar. A hand to an elbow, a nod, a measured breath. I was halfway to the head table when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find my cousin Noah, face uncharacteristically stern. He held his phone like a document. "I didn't want to bring this to you," he said, "but you should see it before it blindsides you." On his screen, screenshots from a group chat I didn't know existed. Elena's name blazed across the top. "Heading to Porterhouse at 4. Dad's skipping Maya's ceremony for this, so be on time." Photos followed. A crowded bar, laughter, a raised glass. Elena lit like a star in a room she'd engineered. The timestamp, smack in the middle of our vows. My stomach turned. Noah swiped to a calendar view. Invitations created, moved, resent. Each date change tracked perfectly against the hiccups our venue faced last month. The ones that had forced us to shift our ceremony by an hour, then by a day, then back again. "She braided her plans through yours," Noah said quietly. "So he'd always be late." The room inclined around me, not spinning now but tipping into a new configuration where the furniture made more sense and was therefore harder to ignore. Across the dance floor, my father watched Henry's mouth move. He was listening, but the weight of the evidence in Noah's hand made his posture small. I could have gone to him then. I could have offered privacy and gentleness and another bridge built from my side. Instead, for the first time in my life, I did not. I stood still and let the moment tell the truth without my intervention. "Thank you," I told Noah, voice steady. "I'm glad I know." He nodded and squeezed my shoulder, then melted back into the cushioning noise of clinking glasses and a band tuning the next song. I walked to Liam, who had tracked my face across the room the way you track the weather when the clouds look strange. "I'm here," I said before he could ask. And I was, inside my skin, inside my choice, inside this exact second where the past finally stopped negotiating the terms of my future. My father approached with the careful steps of a man entering a sacred space where he knew he was a visitor. "Hiya," he said, veneer of calm cracking at the edges. "Traffic was. Tried calling. I was getting married," I said, not unkindly. The words landed flat between us, like a stone set where a boundary should have been years ago. His eyes skittered across the room. The flowers, the dancing, the evidence of joy not arranged around him. For a heartbeat, I saw him as I might see a stranger. A person with reasons and wounds I didn't manage. A man whose choices had been his alone. "You could have made this easier," he said softly. "Pushed the ceremony an hour. Met me in the middle." I opened my mouth, then closed it. No argument I offered would move the axis inside him that insisted the world accommodate his lateness. "Made what easier?" asked finally. "Your choice." He flinched. Before he could answer, Noah appeared again, more boldly this time, and held out his phone toward my father. "You should see this," he said, and though his tone remained respectful, it carried the moral weight every quiet person accumulates by paying attention. My father read. The color drained from his face, a tide pulling back to reveal everything it had covered. "I didn't know," he whispered, and then louder, as if volume could make it true. "If I had known." "You would have what?" The question left me before I could catch it. It didn't taste like accusation so much as an autopsy. Clean, necessary. "Kept your promise?" "Shown up." Conversations cooled around us. People turned, family, friends, witnesses, to a second ceremony where the vows were inversions. What would no longer be tolerated, what would no longer be ignored. He straightened, preparing a speech. "I want to apologize," he announced to no one and everyone. "Not here," I said, the words clear, strangely compassionate. "Not now. But I need to explain." "No, not harsh. Final. A door gently closed, the click unmistakable. You began explaining 2 weeks ago when you looked for reasons not to come. I hear you now by what you did. Something elastic snapped in the air between us. The stretchy band I'd used all my life to tether myself to his approval. Its absence stung and then bewilderingly soothed. I didn't feel empty. I felt new. Henry stepped beside him, a steadying presence that did not absolve. Let her have the evening, he murmured, guiding my father a few steps toward the perimeter. Tomorrow you can speak the truth you owe. My father didn't fight him. He looked at me from the edge of the dance floor, eyes wet, mouth working around an apology that could no longer be performed as a public act. He nodded once, acknowledgement or surrender I couldn't tell. It didn't matter. Liam's hand found mine beneath the table. Are you okay? He asked quietly, and this time I didn't have to search for the answer. I am, I said, surprised at the steadiness of it. Or I will be. Both can be true. The band began another song. Something bright and foolish that dared us to be happy in spite of everything. We walked to the dance floor. As Liam spun me under a canopy of lights, I glimpsed my father at the edge and Henry beside him, a sentinel who loved me enough to keep watch. The ache in my chest was real. So was the relief. Some wounds need air. Some stories need daylight. We turned and turned, dizzy with gratitude and the fringe of grief. And as the room spun into constellations, I understood that sometimes walking away isn't an abandonment of love. It's the only path left toward it. Half an hour into the reception, the silver clink of cutlery against glass rippled through the hall. Laughter dimmed as guests turned toward the center table. Liam rose, champagne flute lifted, his gaze tethered to mine like a lifeline. To my wife, he began, voice rich with pride. To the woman who taught me that resilience isn't quiet endurance but the courage to speak truth even when it breaks the room in half. A cheer erupted, glasses raised high, my chest filling with light. But just as he lowered his glass, I felt the air shift behind me. A tap on my shoulder, heavy with all the weight of unfinished conversations. Why, my father's voice. Rougher now. I turned slowly. His suit hung poorly, his tie skewed as though he had been running yet always arriving late. You made it, I said flatly, neither accusation nor welcome. Traffic was impossible, he muttered. I called, you weren't answering. I was walking into marriage, I replied, each word clipped, the truth unvarnished. He looked around the hall, at the fairy lights strung like fireflies, at the joy he had not built, at the family that no longer needed his permission to exist. His shoulders slumped. You could have pushed it an hour, he said softly. Made room. The absurdity landed between us. How many hours, days, years had I already pushed for him? How much room had I carved out, only to fill it with his absence? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. For the first time, silence told the story better than words ever could. From the corner of the room, Noah approached again, urgency in his step. He held out his phone toward both of us, his expression grim. You need to see this. On the glowing screen were screenshots from Elena's group chat. Heading to Porterhouse. Dad's skipping Maya's ceremony for this. Make sure you show up. The photos that followed were a punch to the lungs. Elena at the center of a bar table, glass raised, her grin wide, friends clapping as if her sabotage were triumph. The timestamp froze me. It was 4:30 p.m. Precisely when Liam was sliding the ring onto my finger. My father's eyes widened, darting over the images as if searching for an escape route. Noah swiped again, revealing calendar invites altered and resent, each new time crafted to collide with my rearranged wedding plans. She shifted it on purpose, Noah explained. Every change you made she mirrored. She wanted him there and not here. I swallowed, my throat raw. That was her event? My voice cracked on the word, thinner than paper. My father's skin drained to ash. I didn't realize. You didn't ask, I whispered. The table nearest us had fallen silent, guests pretending not to watch but hanging on every word. My father straightened, dignity cobbled together too late. If I'd known. You'd have what? I asked again, the question now a blade honed sharp. You'd have walked me down the aisle? Kept a promise for once. He faltered, lips parting, no sound coming. Around us, conversations dimmed. The music hushed. It was as though the room itself demanded an answer. But there was none. I realized then that the pattern of my life with him had never been about one missed moment. It was about a lifetime of them, each absence excused, each promise deferred until today, the day everything was supposed to be different. And it wasn't. A hush gripped the hall. My father broke it with a declaration that rang brittle. "I want to apologize," he said loudly, eyes sweeping the room as though apologies performed in public might weigh more than the ones never given in private. "Not here," I told him firmly. "Not now." He tried again, voice cracking. "But I need to explain." No, it was a single word, but it felt like an iron gate slamming shut. My voice didn't shake. For the first time, I wasn't pleading for scraps of his time. I was defining my own. "You started explaining 2 weeks ago when you began looking for excuses not to come." "I've heard enough." Gasps fluttered through the room, but I didn't flinch. Something snapped inside me, an invisible rope I had dragged for years, tied to his approval. The sudden absence left me weightless, aching but free. He whispered my name, but I turned away, walking toward Liam with steady steps. His hand found mine instantly, strong, certain. "You all right?" he murmured. "Yes." My answer surprised me. It wasn't brittle. It wasn't temporary. It was true, at least for this moment. And for once that was enough. Behind me, Uncle Henry intercepted my father, laying a quiet hand on his arm. His voice carried just far enough for me to hear. "She deserves tonight without more wreckage. Tomorrow is your chance if you want it." My father didn't argue. For once in his life he simply stood still, watching me choose joy without him. The band struck up a new song, something jubilant, almost reckless, and Liam tugged me onto the dance floor. Laughter and music swelled, washing over the last rawness. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anyone's presence. I was standing in my own. The night whirled on with clinking glasses, bursts of laughter, and the glow of fairy lights strung like constellations. I danced until my shoes pinched, until sweat gleamed at my temples, until sorrow loosened its grip and joy claimed space in my bones. But from the periphery I saw him, my father, standing small at the bar, shoulders bowed, a man out of orbit. Henry stayed beside him, sentinel and buffer, his quiet presence preventing disruption. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt the hollow ache of all the years I had begged for scraps, the ache of recognizing that even when people finally want to show up, sometimes the window has already closed. Later, when Liam led me back to the table, Catherine, my new mother-in-law, took my hand. "Are you all right, dear?" "Yes," I said softly. And I meant it. For once, the word wasn't armor. It was truth. Noah passed our table again, shaking his head. "Some people will never change," he muttered. "But you don't have to keep waiting for them to." I squeezed his hand in thanks. Around us, the celebration roared, glasses raised, music swelling, the kind of joy that refuses to be drowned. As Liam pulled me into another dance, I realized something vital. Tonight wasn't about repair. It wasn't about reclaiming what had been denied. It was about choosing what remained. And what remained was more than enough. The father I wished for might never exist. But the husband who held me, the uncle who steadied me, the family who gathered around me, they were real. They had shown up. And that, more than anything, was what defined the night. 1 year later, autumn sunlight slanted through the bay windows of Liam's parents' home, gilding the room with a golden warmth. We gathered around the long oak table, laughter rising above the clink of silverware. It was our first anniversary, and the room brimmed with the people who had carried us through the hardest of days. Catherine raised her glass. "To Maya and Liam, 1 year of marriage and a lifetime of joy ahead." Glasses clinked, cider and champagne fizzing like celebration in liquid form. Liam squeezed my waist, his lips brushing my ear. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Lawson." Across the table, Gregory unveiled a thick photo album. "Thought you might like to see how much family we've packed into just 1 year." Page after page revealed snapshots of our new life. Thanksgiving crowded and loud, Christmas morning with Henry carving the ham, Easter laughter echoing across a garden, July fireworks where my father, tentatively, had shown up with a store-bought salad and halting apologies. The photos weren't perfect. Some smiles were tight, some moments awkward. But each page was proof. Family could be rebuilt brick by brick, even on cracked foundations. When Catherine asked carefully, "Has Elena called recently?" I shook my head. "She moved to Florida. Sent a card when we announced the pregnancy. That's Something. My voice carried no bitterness, only distance. Henry cleared his throat from the armchair. His smile was weary but steadfast as he handed me a small wrapped package. Inside lay a cream-colored baby blanket, hand-knitted decades ago by his late wife. She said it was for the next generation. I think the time has come. I held the blanket to my chest, tears pricking. The threads were soft as memory, strong as promise. For the first time, I let myself imagine my daughter swaddled in it, cocooned in a legacy of love that had survived every storm. The doorbell chimed through the Lawson house, threading its sound through clinking glasses and easy laughter. Gregory was mid-page in the album when Liam stood to answer. He returned a moment later with my father in tow, hair wind-blown, jacket creased, a weathered photo book tucked under his arm like a peace offering that didn't yet know if it would be received. "Sorry I'm late," he said, hovering at the threshold of the living room as if it were holy ground. Traffic on the bridge was backed up. The old explanation slid into the room out of habit, more reflex than intention. I felt the familiar ache reach for me and then pass by, finding nothing to hook into. "We're looking at memories," Gregory said gently, motioning him in. "You're just in time." My father sat at the sofa's edge, leaving a respectful inch of air between us. He opened the album he'd brought, careful as a man handling a live wire. Inside were photographs I'd never seen. My mother pregnant with me, standing in a sunlit kitchen, her hand cupping the very curve my palm now rested on. A candid of my parents laughing, her head thrown back, a half-peeled orange on the counter, sunlight turning the rind to stained glass. "I found these yesterday," he murmured. "Thought you might want them." The room thinned to the sound of turning pages. "I'm sorry I wasn't there when it mattered," he said at last, voice low, eyes on the photo instead of me. "I can't rewrite what I missed. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be here for what's ahead. For her." His glance flicked to my belly. "For your daughter." I didn't promise forgiveness. I didn't perform absolution. I took his hand and set it on the album, his fingers touching the edge of my mother's smile. "One day at a time," I said. Boundaries wrapped the words, not cruelty. Across the room, Henry met my father's eyes and gave the smallest nod. "You may walk, but you will not run." And for once, my father seemed willing to learn a pace that wasn't his. We drifted toward a group photo at Catherine's gentle herding. She fussed with the camera timer, counting backward while everyone arranged themselves into the unscripted geometry of family. I felt Liam's steadying hand at the small of my back. Henry stood on my other side like a lighthouse that refuses to dim just because morning arrived. My father lingered near the edge until Catherine waved him in. He took a place one step behind me, not beside, a seamstress's distance, enough room to let the fabric of the moment lie flat. "Ready?" Catherine called, and then, because she can't help stitching tenderness into every command, "Everyone breathe." We did. The shutter blinked. Somewhere under my palm our daughter rolled, a quiet cartwheel, a private hallelujah. After the flash, chatter resumed like birdsong after a storm. Henry moved to the fireplace mantel, studying the framed photographs there. Graduations, beach days, last Thanksgiving's goofy tower of pies. My father joined him, hands clasped behind his back. "She loved lavender," Henry said, nodding toward a photograph of my mother, younger than I am now, standing in a field of purple. "She gave me a handkerchief once. Asked me to keep it for Maya." My father's throat worked. "I didn't know about the handkerchief." "There's a lot you didn't know," Henry said, not unkindly. "Knowing takes showing up." My father nodded, small, honest. "I'm trying. I'll be early to tryouts this time." "Doctor's appointments," Henry corrected softly, half a smile tugging. "They're called appointments." Behind them, Noah slid me a glance as if to ask whether this scene needed intervention. I shook my head. Some lessons have to be earned in silence. When the cake appeared, 2 tears, sugared roses, a thin ribbon of gold, the room gathered as if answering an altar call. Gregory passed plates. Catherine pressed a fork into my father's hand without ceremony, the most ordinary grace. Later, as we packed away the last of the candles, my father approached again. "May I come to the next ultrasound?" he asked. The question trembled on the edge of presumption and humility. "Yes," I said, then added the clause that made the yes safe. "If you confirm the night before. And if you're there 10 minutes early." "I will be," he said. For the first time I believed he might. Rain traced silver lines down the clinic's windows 2 Thursdays later. Liam and I sat in molded chairs, my chart balanced on my knees, the air humming with the quiet of soft shoes and murmured names. 10 minutes before our appointment, the door opened and my father stepped in, hair combed, tie straight, early. He scanned the room as if attendance were something he could finally take responsibility for. When he saw me, relief crumpled his face in a way that felt like truth. "I brought this," he said, lifting a paper bag. Inside was a thermos of ginger tea and a sleeve of plain crackers. Old remedies from old wives' tales, the kind mothers pass down to daughters. "Your mom swore by it." The nurse called my name. In the exam room, the gel was cold. The screen fuzzed into the familiar universe of static and miracle. And then there she was, our daughter, starlit and impossibly complete. Her heartbeat clipped a tempo that made my own steady itself to match. I watched my father watch the screen. He didn't speak. He didn't narrate. He simply stood very still, eyes wet, as if finally understanding that some moments can't be improved by commentary. When the exam ended, the nurse wiped the gel and printed the grainy photos. My father held one as if it were a passport to a country he'd always wanted to enter but couldn't locate on any map. Out in the hall, his phone buzzed. He glanced down. Elena flashed bright across the screen. His thumb hovered. A familiar dread rose in me, ancient as muscle memory. He let the call go dark. Then deliberately he turned the phone face down on the chair beside him. "I'll call her later," he said. It didn't read as rejection. It read as triage. "Tea?" he asked, unscrewing the thermos cap, pouring into the lid like we were camped beside a road we'd chosen this time. The tea was too sweet. I drank it anyway. On the drive home, I rested my head against the window and watched rain zip backward. Liam's hand found mine on the console. "Trust," he said, eyes on the road, "arrives in teaspoons." "Then let's measure it honestly," I answered. Behind us, my father's car turned in another direction. I didn't know where he was going. For the first time, I didn't need to. The baby shower bloomed in Catherine's garden like a held breath finally released. Bunting fluttered between maple trees. Tables wore linen and jars of peonies. A clothesline of tiny onesies ran from fence to fence, each clipped with pastel pins like prayers. Friends arrived with casseroles and stories. Laughter folded itself into the afternoon. Henry brought a bassinet he'd refinished by hand, the wood rubbed to a soft glow. Gregory staggered in with a stroller he claimed had more suspension than my first car. Noah set up a Polaroid station, insisting every guest leave a picture and a promise in the guest book. My father showed with a cardboard box from his attic. Inside, children's books with cracked spines, a music box that wheezed out half a lullaby, and a tiny sweater my grandmother had knit for him, the left sleeve still shorter than the right. He laid each item out with a reverence that made the garden hush. "I kept these," he said, voice catching. Maybe I was saving them for the day I learned how not to waste what matters. No one applauded. No one sermonized. Catherine simply handed him a paper plate heavy with lemon squares and said, "Here. Eat." The simplest absolution. Midway through gifts, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Heard you're having a girl. Congrats." It signed only with a sun emoji I recognized from Elena's posts. The air inside my lungs thinned. "She reached out?" Liam asked quietly, reading my face. I nodded. "A sentence, not a bridge." "Then we'll wait for a bridge," he said. I typed back, "Thank you. When you're ready for a real conversation, I'm here, with boundaries." I stared at the words before sending. They didn't taste like bitterness. They tasted like a door left unlocked but closed. As the sun sank behind the hedges, guests wrote last notes and tucked Polaroids around the bassinet. Henry snapped a final picture of the four of us. Me, Liam, Catherine, Gregory, with my father at a respectful angle, his hand braced on the bassinet's edge the way you do when you've decided you're staying. That night, the house slept early, heavy with the sweet exhaustion of celebration. I padded to the nursery, the paint still smelling faintly of new beginnings. The bassinet waited by the window, moonlight pooling in it like spilled milk, an echo of the dress I'd worn on a day that broke and remade me. I lowered into the rocking chair and rested my hand where our daughter turned slow as a planet. I thought of the wedding morning, the text that severed the old story, the pearls fastened by Henry's steady hands, the first step down an aisle I had chosen for myself. I thought of Elena's choreography, the calendar edits designed to make me small, of the way Noah's quiet courage cut the strings clean. I thought of my father at the edge of a dance floor and at the edge of a sonogram, of the long road between those edges and the shorter ones still to come. The room held its breath. Somewhere in the hall, a floorboard settled. "Hi," I whispered to the not-yet face I already knew by feeling. "Here is the promise. You will grow up inside a circle that chooses you. Not perfectly, not without human failures, but with a love that shows its work." I imagined her someday asking about our wedding and me telling the truth. About hurt and repair and the kind of loyalty that is proved by early arrivals and kept appointments and hands that lift when no one is looking. I imagined her asking about Elena and me saying boundaries are not punishments. They're railings on high places. You install them when you learn how far you can fall. In the quiet, a memory surfaced. The handkerchief with elms stitched in blue, lavender faint on the fabric, a message across time. You are not alone. I tucked that memory beside the bassinet like a nightlight that never burns out. Liam found me there an hour later. He knelt beside the chair, pressed his forehead to my belly and listened. "She's loud," he said, grinning. "She's here," I answered. And in the place where fear used to live, something else had taken up residence. Stubborn, bright, and durable as morning. I switched off the lamp. The room didn't go dark. It held its own light, the kind you can only see once you've chosen to stop begging and start building. Tomorrow would bring appointments and conversations and more teaspoons of trust. But tonight the promise was enough. And the promise finally was ours. The last month stretched like taffy, sweet, sticky, and longer than it should be. Nights were a carousel of half-sleep and lists in my phone. Bottles, swaddles, pediatrician questions, the exact brand of burp cloths Catherine swore by. Whenever the apartment hushed, I heard the steady tick of a new life approaching. One Tuesday afternoon, a cramp sank its teeth into my abdomen and didn't let go. I froze at the kitchen sink, breath high in my chest, the window framing a winter blue sky. It passed, then another came, stronger. I texted Liam a single word. "Maybe." He replied with a string of exclamation points and on my way. By the time he arrived, the contractions were 5 minutes apart. The car ride made the world small. The hum of the engine, the clock on the dash, my hand wrapped around his wrist like a handle. At the hospital, the automatic doors opened with that soft, obedient sigh, and the scent of antiseptic braided itself with whatever calm I could muster. At triage, I spotted a familiar shape on the waiting room chairs. My father, hands folded, eyes on the double doors. Early mattered. He stood without rushing me, a quiet that didn't jostle. "If you want me here," he said, voice low. "If not, I'll wait. I'm not leaving." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from a number saved with only a sun emoji. "Heard you're in labor. I'm nearby. I can help. Elena." My breath went thin. Another contraction hit like a wave that didn't care about family systems or lessons learned. I texted back, "Not today. We'll talk when I'm home. Boundaries still stand." My thumb shook, but the sentence stood like a fence you paint in the morning so it's dry by nightfall. The nurse ushered us into a room with pale walls and a window pretending at a view. Liam laced his fingers with mine. A monitor translated our daughter's heart into music. Henry arrived next, breathless and grinning, boutonniere swapped for a hospital visitor sticker. He pressed his forehead to mine. "We're here," he said. "All the right people, right on time." For the first time all day I believed it. Labor is a tide that ignores negotiation. Hours in, the world narrowed to counted breaths, the cool drag of a damp cloth on my neck, the rise and fall of a line on a screen. Between contractions I saw snapshots. Liam's jaw set with tenderness, Henry making the nurse laugh, my father in the hall with a paper cup of bad coffee he never drank, staying put. A soft knock, the nurse peered in. "We're progressing," she smiled, voice steady as a metronome. "Who do you want in the room when it's time?" The question found the shape of my answer already waiting. "Liam," I said, "and Henry until the pushing starts." I looked toward the door, toward the shadow of the man who'd missed so much and was trying to unlearn it. "My father can wait right outside. Tell him I'll call for him when she's here." The nurse nodded without flinching. The room exhaled. Boundaries do that, give oxygen back. Between waves, Henry told a story I hadn't heard. The first class he ever taught, the chalk breaking in his fingers, the boy in the back row who made it his mission to test the fences. Took me a month to realize he didn't hate my rules, Henry said. He needed them. He trusted the room more when he could see where it ended. I thought of Elena's sun emoji, my father's quiet in the hall, the handkerchief with elms stitched in blue. Maybe we all needed fences to stop falling. When the time came, the room shifted from prelude to crescendo. Nurses moved with the choreography of practiced kindness. The doctor's voice was a lighthouse, instructions cutting clean through storm. Pain was a country I crossed on foot, one step for every disappointment I had ever swallowed, one step for every yes I was claiming now. Look at me, Liam whispered, mouth against my temple. I'm right here. His certainty braided to my breath. Oi Maya, the doctor said. One more push. The room went bright and sharp, and then something loosened, a cry split the air, old stories cracked like ice in spring. The world rearranged around a new center. They placed her on my chest, and everything went quiet in the way cathedrals go quiet. Space making room for all. She had a furious little mouth and fists that already knew how to hold on. I counted eyelashes I couldn't see, laughed and sobbed at the same time, felt Liam's tears slide into my hair. Hi, I whispered, voice wrecked and brand new. You made it. Henry stepped back, a respectful retreat, and slipped into the hall. Through the door I saw him stop beside my father, hand landing on shoulder, the sort of benediction that doesn't require words. When the nurse invited him in, my father approached like someone entering a nursery rhyme, tiptoe, careful, eyes brighter than I remembered they could be. I studied his face for performance and found none. He stood at the bed's edge, fingers curled against the rail. She's perfect, he said, voice failing at the edges. We're naming her Clara May, I told him. Clara for the light that found us. May for the women who kept choosing. My mother, Henry's mother, Catherine's mother, all the way back. I paused, pressed a kiss to Clara's damp hair. Would you like to meet her? He didn't reach first. He looked to me for permission. I nodded, and the nurse settled Clara into his arms the way you place trust into trembling hands. He bent his head, and something inside him unspooled. Grief, apology, the long arc of learning to arrive. The door cracked open again. The sun emoji appeared on a screen at the nurse's station. A voice too bright insisting she was family, she should be let in, she could help. The nurse handled it with the professionalism of 1,000 messy Thanksgivings. Not on the list, she said gently. Come back when the mother says so. My father glanced toward the commotion, then back at Clara. His phone, silent in his pocket, might as well have been in another city. After a while he surrendered her to Liam, stepped back without being asked, and took out his paper cup of cold coffee like an offering that had finally found its altar. Not usefulness, not big gestures, just being there without demand. The handkerchief with elm waited in my bedside drawer. I pressed it to my eyes and whispered, "She's here." The room agreed. We brought Clara home on a Sunday afternoon when the sky wore the soft gray of a favorite sweater. The apartment had learned its new job overnight. Bottles assembled like tiny rockets, the bassinet stationed by the window, a laundry line of onesies waking and sleeping along the radiator. Love had taken on the logistics of survival. Diaper counts, feeds logged in a shared note, swaddles like origami we learned with our eyes half closed. Catherine arrived with soups you could eat one-handed. Gregory fixed the wonky cabinet door that had groaned for months. Henry changed a light bulb and then cried when it turned on. My father took the trash out without asking where the chute was. He returned with a pack of the expensive wipes we hadn't bought for ourselves. He didn't announce it, he just put them in the drawer. On the third evening, a letter slipped beneath our door in a plain envelope. No return address, just my name in neat print I recognized from childhood chore charts. I stood at the counter while Clara slept and read Elena's handwriting. I was 16 when Mom died. Dad looked at me like a life raft, and I liked being important. When you got good at things without me, I didn't know what to be. I thought if I kept him busy I could keep being needed. I'm not defending what I did. I'm telling you the only truth I know about it. I'm in therapy. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want to try again when you're ready, this time without traps. Congratulations on Clara. The sun is for hope, not for blinding. I stared a long time at the line about hope. Boundaries rose instinctively, the same fence but maybe with a gate I controlled. I wrote back, "Thank you for telling the truth. I am not ready for visits. I'm open to letters." If you keep going to therapy for 6 months, we can talk about coffee, with Henry there. I want family. I won't trade my peace to get it. I sealed the envelope and placed it on the hall table. In the nursery, Clara hiccuped herself awake, then blinked toward the window as if learning light by heart. I lifted her and swayed, the floor creaking its approval. Some beginnings arrive like fireworks. Others like a quiet key turning in a lock you'd given up on. This one was the second kind. Spring made a promise and kept it. On Clara's first birthday, the park was a patchwork of picnic blankets and laughter. Bubbles orbited the stroller like planets. Catherine had outdone herself with a cake that looked like a sky you could slice. Henry wore a ridiculous crown that said wonderful and refused to take it off. Noah manned the grill and the playlist, stern about neither. Gregory assembled a pop-up tent with the solemnity usually reserved for space launches. My father arrived early with folding chairs and sunscreen and a new trick, asking what we needed before deciding what he would do. He made a small city of shade near the swings and kept it alive without commentary. Near noon, a woman hovered at the edge of our blanket, sunglasses in her hand, sunlight pooling at her feet. She looked smaller than the memory I had carried. "Hi," Elena said, voice careful. "I brought a card. I'll leave it and go." I studied her like you study weather. The card was plain. Inside, a photo of a sunrise over water, the kind that doesn't brag. 6 months of therapy. Still going. Happy birthday, Claire. If there's a chance for me to learn to love the way you need, I want it. I handed the card to Henry. He read it, then glanced at me with that teacher's patience that had raised me through adulthood. "We could start with a 10-minute walk," he suggested. "On the path. With me." So we did. The three of us moved slow beneath trees that had invented the color green again. Elena talked in short sentences and let silence stand between them without trying to fill it. She didn't ask to hold Clara. She asked how to help next month when I went back to work. I said we'd talk by email. She didn't wilt at the word email. She nodded like someone who had finally learned the cost of shortcuts. Back at the blankets, Clara smashed frosting into cartography and declared it dinner. My father lifted her carefully, more confident now, cake in his hair and an expression I had once begged for and now simply received. Liam wrapped an arm around my waist. "Look," he murmured. I followed his gaze to Henry, who had pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. He approached with the ceremony of a man returning a relic to a temple. "These are for Clara when she's grown," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate silver clasp and a single pearl threaded on a fine chain. "A piece of her great-grandmother's necklace set aside the day you wore it. So she'll know the story and the showing up that remade it." I felt the old handkerchief in my pocket. A ritual now, a talisman and a reminder that love can cross whatever distances stubbornness invents. I pressed the cloth to my lips and tasted lavender in years. When the camera timer blinked, we gathered in the unscripted geometry we had learned. Liam at my side, Clara in my arms, Henry anchoring one shoulder, Catherine and Gregory bright as constellations, Noah mid-joke, my father steady, Elena a few steps back but inside the frame. "Everyone breathe," Catherine called. We did. The shutter clicked. The moment held. And in the stillness after, I knew the truth I would teach my daughter until she could say it without looking down. Family is not who claims you, it's who keeps choosing you. Not perfectly. Not without failing. But with apologies that come with actions and boundaries that come with love. We packed the blankets, the chairs, the leftover cake. The sun tilted toward evening and the path home gleamed. I tucked the pearl box into the diaper bag, the handkerchief into my pocket, Clara's fist around my finger. We walked toward the future we had built the slow way, teaspoon by teaspoon, promise by promise, bright as morning, durable as truth.